In this lesson, we're going to continue on with my water bottle. And where I left the water bottle last time was a solid color in for the label. I'm going to change that. If you notice, I still have the selection present up on the label itself, and we're going to actually work with gradients. As I go down through the More menu, I will hit upon the Gradient tab. And you can see that obviously what gradients do is they allow you to mess around with certain colors and certain patterns. There are generally two types of gradients. I won't get too much into gradients because I know there was another video that talked about editing gradients and doing those types of things with gradients. But I am going to actually create my own gradient. I'm going to use a radial gradient. And let's see if I can dig that up here. Okay, so there's my radial gradient, and I'm going to change the colors. So I'm going to create my own. Okay, so I'm going to use the two-color radial gradient, and I've got black on the edge. I want to keep that. Instead of white, I'm going to choose the green, which looks good there. And the last thing I'm going to do, and again, I covered this in a previous video, so I'm going to extend the gradient out so it's just dark on the edges. So you'll see I've got my my look there, and I'm just trying to get so it's just enough dark around the edges to give it that gradient feel. Should be good to go there. We will commit. And the last thing I want to do is deselect the label. So I'm going to deselect. And there's my label with the gradient in it. Once again, once you start messing around with gradients, there's ways that you can adjust a bunch of different things. I covered this in a previous video. There's also the fading idea too as well, which very similar to gradients, but in this particular case, there's your gradient on your label, and we're good to go. The next piece we're going to do is we're going to lay some text out on top of this label. Before I even do that, I'm actually going to go get a graphic though, because I need a graphic on this label of a hose with water in it. So I'm going to go over to Google. I think I've already got it searching. I searched for a water hose, and the one I'm looking for is this one right here. So I'm going to grab that one. We're actually going to put this hose on the label itself. So here's the point where I'm taking a little bit of a left turn, doing some different things with different tools found within Touch. So I'm just going to add this picture in. You'll notice it comes in, and I'm going to move it over on top of the label. So I'm good there. I'm going to commit that layer, and you'll know there's a brand new layer there. And let me expand this here so I can see the hose. And what I want is just the hose. I don't want the grass behind it. So I'm going to need to be able to select the hose out. So I'm going to go down to my selection tools. I'm going to grab my favorite, which is the paintbrush selection, or the brush selection tool. Let me see what I'm at size-wise here. 42, that's good. All right, and I'm going to paint over just the hose to select the hose. And I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time making sure it's a perfect selection here, but in any case, you see what I'm doing? And there's my selection of my hose, and then what I'm going to do is go up to extract. I know I'm going through this very quickly, but I'll cover more of that in depth when we start talking about the selections in the selection chapter. So I've got just my hose. Now all I want to do is move it over to the side, right off of the edge. There we go. And along with the gradient piece, I'm actually going to, let me deselect that. I'm good to go there. So I'm going to deselect that and put it on its own layer, which is good. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to fade the water. And the fade, you notice the fade panel at the bottom looks very similar to gradients. The red pieces are what you want to see, and then the transparents are what you actually want faded. So as I look at my image right here, I've got two lines that I can mess with, similar to the way gradients are structured. And the closer these handles are to each other, the more tight the fade is. So in this particular case, right, the water fades right off. If I can make this even tighter, I get rid of more and more of the water, all the while the hose is in full opacity over to the left. So I kind of like that look right there as the water fades off into the label. You can choose many different types of fades. These are vertical and horizontal fades, and then you have radial fades as well, which is very similar to your gradients. Again, the only difference there is gradients, you've got that added idea of color. You can choose color within gradients. Fades are just complete opacity. It's either fully opaque or you can actually see the image in front of you. So kind of a quick glance to fades, and we're good there. So I'm going to commit that. So I've got the hose with the water coming out with the fade.